Words spoke from the walls. Only a child could see such a beast, whose name is average but whose powers are great. September 1931 was when it all began. A period of spiritualism had washed over England and America, and even touched the Isle of Man. James, Margaret, and their 13-year-old daughter Vore, Irving, started to hear odd scratching and rustling from their wooden walls. The sound resembled that of a ferret or a dog. It was strange, but not unheard of. The family set up traps to get the vermin, but nothing came up, and the noises continued. They started to show more concern. Suddenly the noises turned to odd barking and gurgling, like that of a baby making small noises. Soon it changed, growing into mimicking the family as they whistled, singing tunes that the birds sang outside, to growls, and even started to talk in full sentences. This is when they learned of who it was. A creature named Jeff, who claimed he was born in Delhi, India in 1852, and that he was a mongoose. He was an intelligent creature, soon singing tavern songs and communicating with the family on the average basis, but it was not all that he had done. He was much more significant than just a talking mongoose. James and Margaret claimed to have only seen glimpses of Jeff, while Vore saw him in full. The 13-year-old described him as a small rat with yellowish fur and a large bushy tail, which does have an appearance of a mongoose. Jeff himself described himself as many things. Here are a few: an extra clever mongoose, earthbound, ghosts in the form of a mongoose, and even once as, "I am a freak, I have hands and I have feet, and if you saw me you'd faint. You would be petrified, mummified, turned into stone or a pillar of salt." Mind you, the entire family have claimed to see glimpses or see him in full, and no one has turned into any of these things. The family made many claims on what this odd beast did normally. It is a small list, but an interesting one. Guard their house, woke them up when they overslept, chase or eat mice, put out the fire at night if family forgot, go shopping with the family but remain hidden, report to the family with gossip about neighbors that apparently no one knew. He'd bring dead rabbits for the family to cook. He'd also like to tease, spit, and bother Margaret, and insult and throw temper tantrums. He also liked singing to the point that annoyed the family, since most of the songs he sang were dirty tavern songs. Regardless of his sometimes aggressive behavior, for everything good he did, they did leave out biscuits, chocolates, and bananas in a saucer suspended from the ceiling for him. He'd only eat his treats when no one was looking. He was quite a talker and was able to even speak multiple different languages such as Russian, Hindu, Spanish, Welsh, Hebrew, and Flemish, but most comfortable speaking English or the Manx dialect. He even may have known a little bit of sign language, though I don't know how they would know. He would often contradict himself, exclaiming he was an earthbound spirit, but then that if I were a spirit, I would not kill rabbits. He wanted to be around mostly Vore, which would tear her apart from fearing him and then seeing him as a secret friend. There was a point in time when Maggie, or Margaret, was curious and asked him where he would go when he died. He responded, "To hell, to the land of mist." When asked to James what he thought of Jeff, he said that it was a hybrid-looking thing, a mix of a stoat or a ferret, and that his daughter told him that the face was all yellow and that it was the shape of a hedgehog with a flattened snout like a pig, kind of contradicting her story of it being all yellow. When he was asked about Jeff's ability to speak, he said that Jeff did not possess this at first. Now he will not shut up. Of course, he said this a little bit nicer. In the end, Vore did take some photographs of Jeff, or the supposed Jeff. Before we get into the juicy stuff, I'm going to name off a few famous sayings Jeff has said, but I'm not going to say them out loud myself because I have no idea how a talking mongoose sounds, so I'm just going to list them out. A talking mongoose is going to strike the world by storm. And it did. In July 1935, editor Richard S. Lambert and paranormal investigator Harry Price went to the Isle of Man to investigate. They found a hair from the alleged mongoose, which they sent out, and it reached naturalist F. Martin Duncan, who identified it as a dog hair. Price suspected that the hair must have belonged to the Irvin's sheepdog, Muna. Price then asked Reginald Pocock of the Natural History Museum to evaluate paw prints that were made in plasticine and claimed to be Jeff's. Pocock couldn't get an exact match on the animal, but he was sure it was made by a dog. He also stated that none of the markings were made by a mongoose. When Price visited the farmhouse, he noticed that the walls were double, covering the interior of the rooms. He said, "It makes the whole house one great speaking tube, with walls like sounding boards. By speaking into one of these many apertures in the panels, it should be possible to convey the voice to various parts of the house." After their investigation, according to Richard Wiseman, Price and Lambert had little faith in the case, and even concluded that only the most ludicrous of individuals would be impressed with evidence of Jeff. Nander Fodor, a research officer from the International Institute for Psychical Research, stayed at the farm for a week, but came with no sighting or hearing from Jeff. In 1945, James Irvin died and the farm fell into ruins. Margaret and Volley left the farm and sold it to Leslie Graham in 1946. Leslie Graham was an actor who bought the farm and who claimed to the press that he had shot and killed Jeff. The body was put on display. However, the body was black and white and much larger than the famous mongoose. After hearing this, Volley said she was certain it was not Jeff. Volley died in 2005, taking with her her determination that Jeff was not her creation, but a real creature. So what was it? A talking mongoose? A spirit? Or just the Irvings messing with people? We'll go through all the possibilities, from the least likely in my opinion to the most likely. We can't say there aren't mongoose on the Isle of Man. Back in the early 1900s to the late 1800s, there was a fellow neighbor on the island that imported mongooses to the area to help with the rabbit problem. An invasive species always does have a habit of spreading a population like wildfire, so the likelihood that the Irvins knew what a mongoose and how they look like is very likely. But then to explain a creature that has only some characteristics of a mongoose and at all, then we can start questioning whether or not it was an actual mongoose. Plus, mongoose don't talk. At one point, that Jeff mentioned what kind of mongoose he was, a marsh mongoose. Marsh mongoose don't fit the description of what Volley said at all. They are dark brown with not a pig-like nose or a hedgehog shape. The mongoose they might be talking about is a yellow mongoose, or sometimes called a red meerkat. Now, I have no idea what kind of mongoose the neighbor imported, but the Irvins may have been confused about the species. The footprints, stains on the walls, and hair samples were all proven to not be a mongoose, but some other origin, mostly relating to the Irving sheepdog. Apparently, so were the pictures Volley took of Jeff. A little back information. A kobold is a sprite from the Germanic mythology. I only saw this once mentioned, and it was in the comments of a blog. They can materialize as an animal, fire, or a human being, or a candle, and is usually invisible. They are actually mentioned today in German folklore. Kobolds usually live in mines or on ships, and not usually in people's homes. And yes, they do love messing with people, but it doesn't add up to me. These next two I am tied on though. I am not claiming that Jeff the Mongoose is the legit Bell Witch, but I am saying that these circumstances are very similar to the Bell Witch. The way it talks, responds, and teases the family is very much like the witch, except for the actual physical harm. I conclude many theories of the Bell Witch, but what I learned on the most was a poltergeist mixed with the possibility of an actual spirit. Poltergeists occur when a child, young teen, or young adult have experienced something that made them traumatic and emotionally unstable. Without them knowing, they start causing very odd paranormal things to start occurring, like voices, items moving, hurting others without being the cause. Their emotional instability creates something like a shift that causes paranormal like activity that can get pretty aggressive. Part of me feels like this could be it, but at the same time, I believe the other theory that is to come next. Some people believe it was just the Irvins making it all up, creating a story to get some sort of popularity, probably to help with the farm's finances. But what about the several locals and visitors who heard his voice? People want to hear what they want to hear. Researchers also suspect ventriloquism for Volre. How they came up with this is beyond me, but it probably has to do with that Volre was the only one that truly saw Jeff in all his glory. Maybe the entire family was part of it. Had she used her ability when others were around in hopes to solidify their story? An example of this is when the Isle of Man examiner reported that he caught Volre making noises that they claimed were Jeff. He pointed this out to the family and James got upset and tried to convince him that it was coming from somewhere else and not his daughter. So what do you think? Most of me believe it has to be a hoax, but a smidge of me, if it weren't for the evidence proving more of a hoax, does believe in Poltergeist, though it is minor. If you like, please support this channel by checking out my Patreon. I create videos on cryptids, abductions, hauntings, serious killers, and much more. If you can't, like, comment, and subscribe here. I also have put up my PayPal for any of those who can't donate monthly, but who still would like to. I'd like to thank my supporting Patreon thus far.